Okay, we've mounted the scroll chuck to the lathe. I've mounted the bowl into the chuck. I'm going to just snug the chuck up to start with. Turn the speed way, way down. Now I'm going to turn the lathe on and make sure that the bowl is running true. So look at the profile. If it looks like it's jumping all over the place, you have a problem. Always inspect the bottom of your bowl. You want to make sure that the flat area you've created is against the top of the jaws, and that the bottom of the bowl, the tenon, doesn't touch the bottom of the chuck. If this surface here touches the bottom of the chuck, there's no guarantee that the bowl is square to the lathe. Makes for some very interesting shapes if it's not. If it's not fitting correctly, you need to examine why. Is there some debris here? Is there a little radius in that corner? Need to be very careful with things like that, because this is all that keeps the bowl connected to the lathe. But we lucked out. Actually, no, we were very careful in making the tenon, so everything works good. Now I can tighten it down. And how tight do we want? You want it snug. Tight. Use both of the mounting holes, because there's always a little bit of slop, as it were, machine tolerances in the chuck. So we use both of these ports to tighten up the wood, or the chuck onto the wood. No vibration, we're good. This surface is not flat, it's irregular. So in order to make things easier for starting our cuts, I'm going to flatten this surface first. Put down my headrest, my face mask, and just make a pass across here so I end up with a flat surface. Don't get aggressive. This will also help to put some more balance into our bowl blank and make it much easier to go through the hollowing process. Bingo. Now remember earlier I said that creating the outside shape and everything is longer, takes more work than doing the inside. You will be surprised how quickly this inside disappears. You have a couple of options at this point. As always, there's options. One would be to take a drill and drill a hole in the center of your bowl down to a depth 1 inch less than the depth of the bowl. That gives you a place to start and stop your cuts. Also, as a safety measure, it prevents you from going again to that hospital and getting emergency work. Now, what do I mean by that? When this bowl is turning, as long as your gouge stays from the center point to the left of center, the wood is coming into the cutting edge, and the likelihood of you getting in trouble is pretty slim. However, if your tool crosses over the center point to the right side, the wood can actually pick up the tool, carry it up in a big arc, and slam it down. Not necessarily a bad thing. However, what usually happens 99.923% of the time, your finger gets to the tool rest just before the tool does. If you're lucky, you break a finger. And that sounds, well, that doesn't sound too lucky. But a broken finger takes 90 to 120 days to heal. What usually happens, however, is that when this comes over and slams down on top of your finger, ow, you get a soft tissue injury, a bone bruise, and it's almost a year before the pain goes away. So if you drill a hole in here, your tool can't cross over the center point. It drops into the hole and is captured. You're safe. The other option is to use your gouge to create a depression, a cone-shaped cut, like so. and again you're good. Now we're doing a cone-shaped cut. You start at the center, cut towards the center. Don't start out here and try to hollow things out. It doesn't work. You end up blowing the bowl off the lathe and you're chasing around looking for parts. You can break windows, put big dents in your car, go through the garage door. It gets nasty really quick. My bevel is going in at, 45-degree angle. The tool is almost horizontal. I'm holding it up high up here with a handle under my forearm, like so. This means if the tool wants to jump around, it's got to lift my body mass, which although I'm losing weight is still substantial, and the tool is much easier to control. Because look, I'm on the bevel. I use my hand here to stop this from kicking back, but because it's got a narrow nose, there's not a lot of tool engaged in the wood, and it's really easy to start the cuts. The cuts are thin, maybe a 1/16 of an inch or less, but they go really fast, as you can see. Again, the tool is close to my body. My forearm is on top of the handle. I go all the way to the center. Now there comes a point when you're doing this where the distance from the tool rest to the wood is, say, 1.5 inches, like so. And continue cuts like that. Do not go sideways and try to clean this surface up. This surface in here doesn't mean anything, because the next cycle we're going to start here and go down like that. We just keep this process up. We get out to the edge to whatever our preconceived idea of thickness is, and we can stop. We just keep this process going. Remember, thin cuts. It's better to make 271 light cuts than one oops. Usually an oops isn't good. Like that, where it kicked back, I didn't have the bevel pointing directly to where I wanted the cut to go. And this is a really hard wood. That's my excuse. I'm going to stick with it. You can see how fast this disappears. So we can pick a target thickness for the bowl. If it's an art piece bowl, I can have a 1/16 of an inch thick or an inch thick. It doesn't matter. It's my choice. If it's a utilitarian bowl, for salad or popcorn or Skittles, whatever your choice is, then the thickness is going to be maybe 3/8 to 1/2 inch. This has got some severe crackage in it. Okay, we've removed the mass from the inside, got the shape we wanted, got the thickness we were looking for. It's consistent. We don't want any thin spots. A thin spot creates a hinge, and the wood will fail eventually, maybe while you have a gouge inside, which is always exciting. We try not to get air time for our bowls. So, as I said, we've got the inside done. The inside shape is the same as the outside shape. Ta-da! That's the goal. At this point, we're going to take it out of the chuck, and we're going to turn the bowl around and grip it by the rim. The attachment we're using is, again, from One Way. It's called a Mega Jumbo Jaws. This one is just a little bit different because, I can't have any standard tools. I've always got to modify them a little bit. These grippers are from another manufacturer. and they are much better, I think, in that they will hold on to the wood, not make any marks. They're urethane. One side is concave, the other is convex. So depending whether you want to grip by the inside or the outside, the shape will accommodate. These are by Vicmark, and they work really, really, really well at $8 or $10 a piece. So first thing I do before I do any work on the bottom of a bowl, I'm going to make sure that I have enough thickness there, because we don't want surprises. Remember, a light at the end of the tunnel means you've turned a funnel. So at this stage, we've got an investment in time and material. We don't want to go through the bottom. So I've got a lot of material left in the bottom, which will give me exactly the shape I wanted. I've mounted everything up. Now I'm going to remove the tenon and cut back inside, hollow the base out just a bit. Speed's the same, not quite. I like, when using this attachment, I like my speed to be around 700. In theory, they say 1,000 is fine. I like 700. I like the cutting effort to be in line with the lathe, because then you're less likely to knock this piece out of the chuck. There's not much that keeps this thing together at this stage, so you've got to be careful. What? What did you say? Oh, yes, you're right. Where is my face mask? Aha! Thank you for being so sharp-eyed and noticing that. And back to the cutting. First, remove the tenon. I'm not going to take all of the tenon off. I'm going to leave a little bit here. Now I'm going to start the back cutting. I leave the tenon on there because it's going to bear against the tool rest. If it moves just a little bit, that'll give me an indication that things are coming loose. Also, as you recall, we were going to reduce the height of the pedestal a little bit in order to get rid of this little smiley right here. So that's next. Light cuts. You can hear that. The wood doesn't like it. Cutting across this way, because I'm going into end grain twice each revolution. So this way, we'll just slice down through it. Now I'm slicing through face grain. And the cut is much more controlled, more manageable. And it goes just as quickly. Back hollowing this bottom. Getting some mass out of it, which will reduce the weight of the bowl. Again, that noise you hear, I'm going directly into the end grain. So the cutting dynamics are different when you're cutting into end grain than going through face grain. Okay, we're almost at the end of taking off this little tenon. And the cut I'm making now is kind of a conical shape. That is the greater diameter here and is necking down. I can do this kind of a cut with the bowl gouge, or in a pinch, bingo, I could use a spindle gouge with a fingernail grind on it. So I've taken this down now almost to where we want it. We've gotten rid of the tenon, so this area needs to be concave relative to this one. When it sits on a table or whatever it's on, we want it to rest on the rim out here, and none of this should contact the wood. So we just get rid of part of it. Quick and easy. We've got a lot of material we can get rid of, so we'll just take some out. We're almost where we want to be. Now, this is a little edge, so this is thicker than over here. So how do we make them even? We glide along here on the bevel. The edge will find a high spot. The cutting edge of my tool is going to transect the exact center of the bowl, so there will not be a lump at the end of it. Bingo. This is concave. It's going to rest out here. Now, you might have noticed that whenever somebody picks up a wooden bowl, for some reason they turn it over. What are they looking for? Who knows? But give them something to look for and surprise them. So I always like to put a little rosette down here using the gouge. Decorate the bottom a wee bit. So give them a surprise. I think one of the nicest things about doing bowls is what I call ooh factor. When somebody picks up your bowl, you want them to go, ooh, that's nice. And there we have it. Except for sanding and finishing, the bowl is done.